All right, the next one is why Star Citizen struggles with instability and why the devs don't fix it. From Space Tomato. Tell me why.
Ask plenty of people interested in Star Citizen what its problems are, and most would say it's the stability, especially recently with new database tech coming online. In my most recent podcast episodes with YouTubers Ferrister and Yamix, we got to talking about what they saw as some of the struggles with the game. I'll leave those linked down below along with the rest of my weekly podcast, but for those who know Yamix, you may be surprised to hear him say the game could be great right now. So you feel like this, besides like stability and some story and like the core of the game, you do feel like it's something that could be released?
If Star Citizen refined its optimization, if it sorted out the features that are, still in progress of being made for the current existing stuff, right, and stopped any new additions, if they just refined it, yeah, it'd be a pretty good game.
If they just refined it, I mean, that's a weird, that's so many things though. Like, even though it was a short sentence, think about how many things it is to refine it. You know what I mean? For those of you that don't know, Yamix has been very vocally negative about Star Citizen over the years, talking a lot of crap about the game, and rightfully so. I don't think he's really been super wrong on a lot of the things he said.
Let's say performance is really good, right? Star Citizen
Like
would
normal.
look fantastic. Add even hell an 8-hour simple story chain, right? And you're done. You made a really good space sim.
This 10-year alpha is still
That's it. And then after 8 hours, what do you do? I don't know. I don't think that's what most people bought in for, but I think I get what he's coming from.
known for performance issues, and instead of creating a smoother game for players to play right now, they continue adding new features and mechanics that can cause more problems. Today I'm going to show you why they do this, and why you should still be happy they do. And for a chance to win a 400i multi-person exploration ship, stick around until the end. Thank you for coming to my Tomato Talk.
I like Tomato Talk. Why so buggy?
The first step to understanding the absolute jank that can sometimes be Star Citizen is realizing it's still early in development. Now, let's stop right there, because the term will likely send some folks careening out of their chairs. I'm not going to give you a detailed walkthrough of Star Citizen's history.
That was me.
I did that a couple years ago. The game has had some struggles in development. In 2015, it expanded in a major way, adding explorable and much more expansive planetary bodies, setting back development a few years as the tech was built out and implemented into the game, as we've seen in the following years. And up until around 2017 and 3.0, I would say the project was lacking in obvious direction, coming off as a tech demo. Some may say it still does.
It still does.
Since then, though, the focus has been solidifying the systems that could create and support an actual game for years to come. This includes the in-house UI system, planetary creation tools, the outpost, and
Bro, everything you're showing me doesn't exist, though. Oh, well, they show stuff all the time, and then we never have it.
space station building systems like Rastar.
It's the constant believing that any of these things are going to come to you in a short period of time, or in any reasonable time, that you can actually, as a Star Citizen content creator, mark those as like points that you can look forward to, which is the thing that I struggle with. I don't look forward to any of those
Ship
things.
creation pipeline, a proper rendering engine, the audio engine, and more. These weren't new technologies to the industry, but they needed to be built in-house so they could scale, grow, and develop as the game and other projects in Star Citizen do, rather than depending on the engine from somebody like Epic. The two most important of these systems are persistent entity streaming and server meshing. These systems are absolute requirements for the way Star Citizen is meant to work. If you want to be able to find your friend's crashed ship 2 days after they landed, persistence is needed. And if we want a seamless environment across massive spaces with a reasonable server load on any planet or location, server meshing is meant to help.
Yeah.
Despite this ground-level importance of these tools and the multitude of devs that have been working on them, they have taken years to implement, with PES only just being added in 3.18 and server meshing still out of reach. So if the foundation of the game relies on these pieces of tech, it only makes sense to say the development process is still early, just not necessarily that it just started.
Yeah.
With that being
Okay.
said, though, if
That explanation is all super fair. Like, it's still early in the tech, like from the tech standpoint, is they don't even have the foundational features of the game. So, you know, there can't be a disagreement there. It's just the wording of it is so frustrating to people, right? Like, it literally is just makes me want to punch a hole in the wall every time you hear how it's still early, because, you know, we're not ignoring the fact that because they keep adding features is why we're still early days, because we're not just delivering the tech without everything having to hook into it, you know?
all of those developers and engineers are working at building out these complex systems, that only leaves them less time to solve tech debt and figure out the more challenging bugs. With more emphasis on defining the fundamentals behind actually running the game, these devs and the devs working on things like modular mission systems and resource management gameplay may not have the time to continuously deal with glitched mission givers or torque imbalanced glitches. And this really sucks. But let's look at the alternative. NPCs have stood on chairs in Star Citizen since at least 2019, and the problem has been solved at least 3 distinct times. However, it just keeps coming back for entirely different reasons. Thankfully, NPCs on chairs is not a problem that will ruin your day, but this is just an example. As the game is built, it's undergoing more ground level changes than most early access games, so things will tend to break. And when they get fixed, sometimes so much code is constantly changing, they just break again. NPCs standing on chairs might be fixed based on the way that levels load in, but they could break 8 months later based on a change due to AI logic. This is one of the major problems of the game, and why most people should not be playing the game at this time.
Yes.
Major game loops like refining, engineering, and crafting don't exist. The dynamic economy is not dynamic, and there's not even a player trading system yet. The focus with the current state of the game is to continue building these major missing aspects. And a balance of keeping the game playable enough to test and understand versus adding some of these major new features to continue towards the goal is not an easy one to shoulder. It's best laid out, in my opinion, by Jace, a former community manager for another game I love, Satisfactory.
And when we talk about community management and communication, this is the gold standard. In my experience with all video games, this company was the gold standard, and this man was the gold standard. Star Citizen, community teams, Jared, video production teams should take a good hard look at what they do, because they're really good at it.
Not only that, but maintaining a high level of stability during active development is also incredibly inefficient, okay? This is because it would mean consistently undoing and redoing work that we've done before in order to stabilize the game when the game's design is constantly changing and new features are being added.
Now, CIG has said all the things he's just said. The difference is that they continue to sell spaceships and continue to sell you a dream of something that may or may not exist or may not be possible. So for everything that I just heard, I've heard exactly out of Jared's mouth, Chris's mouth, Jake's mouth, literally anybody who has communicated from the development side to the community side has said exactly what he just said. It's the other things that people go, okay, cool, but then you do this, you know? I think is part of the problem.
Not only that, but adding new features risks instability anyway as it is, whether or not we're redoing and undoing work. So, and long term, this makes no sense because it would mean that it'll take us like, I don't know, twice as long to finish the game when we could just do it in half the amount of the time if we were to accept some level of growing pains. We've been working on Satisfactory for like 6 or 7 years now, and if we were chasing all these bugs to clean them all up at every possible step of the way, we wouldn't be nearly as far in development as we are now. Financially, this is awful, and then maybe even interest-wise, you guys wouldn't be getting any new stuff, and it would get very boring.
It sounds pretty familiar. The fact is, when the game is being built, most of the effort is going to go towards, building. In the alpha phase, features need to be proven out, tested, and made to integrate with the rest of the game. While I would also appreciate more focus on making sure that what we have now gets the job done, the amount of effort it could take away from upcoming bounty hunting missions, the next cargo refactor, the new star map, underground facilities, or building interiors might not seem worth it. And many of these new features being worked on will end up replacing the old buggy systems anyways, and getting rid of existing problems. So then,
like, I just want to clear up my perspective on the whole thing real quick as well. Is I do think we should take some time out to clean up some tech debt. Like, it's undeniable that it's hurting the progress of things. Like, there's no doubt about it as well. But I think in general, my common theme on the way that I feel about Star Citizen is one singular thing. Is you can continuously add features while the game is still in development. They still do it today. Obviously, there's some stability and instability. It's the choice of what feature that they are choosing to do is the part that I usually have a hard time with. The fact that we still don't have player progression, the fact that we still don't have an economy, the fact that we still don't have the purpose for all the things that are being added, that is something that can be tested during alpha development as well, right? Economic things, player progression things, reputation things, what the game actually is supposed to be, that groundwork is not in the game. Where if you look at a Satisfactory, yes, you can make the comparisons to exactly what he said to exactly what our experiences are in Star Citizen, but you don't have the framework of how people will play Star Citizen in the future at all. And the fact that wasn't like one of the number one priorities from the beginning, I always thought was very weird. And yeah.
what's the point? The new star map shines as an obvious example here, knowing how bad the star map is currently. All of this isn't even to mention the priority of bug fixing will likely be on Squadron 42, which is due to release much sooner.
Oh my god, I know what program he uses to download these videos, because I have that exact problem where it just glitches out like that.
Much less
I literally
expansive.
know what happened there.
Those fixes may hopefully make their way to Star Citizen, but as with many things, the majority of the effort will go to Squadron first. So when looking at stability in Star Citizen, there are definitely some reasons to point to it seemingly not being a priority. With everything changing so often, the effort being put into bug fixing at this stage of development could pop right back up, wasting time or money, and could be fixed by an upcoming and inevitable change to the game. If those changes are something bigger, like the changes that caused the terrible 9 months that were 3.0 to 3.3, or the incredibly unstable implementation of PES in 3.18, then it's just an inevitable pain point that they have to push through. And a pretty good time for players to take a break, maybe taking advantage of upcoming Arena Commander fixes. And finally, there's just a lot to do. Maybe glitches won't pop back up, but with every patch release, the attention jumps to the next 2 updates. Because at the end of the day, the most important concern for the company is to fund and release Squadron 42 and develop Star Citizen.
Excuse me.
The absolute best ways to do that, tried and true, is to continue adding features to the game that people want. More features means more options for more people, means more attention, means more excitement for new features, and eventually, ship sales. While funding has largely increased as the game became more stable and playable since 2020, I do believe there is also a direct correlation with new features and gameplay options keeping the game interesting and attracting more eyes.
I agree.
That being said, if you look at the progress tracker or read the monthly reports, you will see a ton of bug fixing always ongoing. But this cycle of pain that leads to you bright space people suffering through the occasional glitchy mess is not forever. While we are still in the alpha stage, Star Citizen's clearly operating as an experience that they hope people will play as a game. So they definitely have blame to take in the expectations that they set there.
Yes.
And they do have a responsibility to continue striving to meet them. Here are a few ways I think the Star Citizen experience will improve in the near future, despite these complications.
Let's see what he has to say here. This is the key, I
Before
think.
we start, everybody should expect there to be no major push to end all bugs for a good amount of time, at least until beta. But currently there are some ways in which the game is raising its stability in leaps and bounds. One thing I think many players have noticed over the last couple of years have been the quality of life improvements. This might sound like basic things like adding move all and shift click functionality to the inventory system, but there's more. Boosting servers to 100 players, updating crime stats to avoid prison sentences, at least trying to account for 30k losses at various times, in-game stopwatches, an actual tutorial for new players, and major changes to the game renderer and therefore frame rate improvements are all additions of various...
Is this another hopeful video? I mean, listen, everybody has their own perspectives on life, okay, and the way they look at things, but everything that I've seen is this is a very analytical video, and he's taking all of the information that he has and creating his opinion through it, and it makes sense. I think the parasocial relationship you guys have with content creators and putting them in a box and labeling them as if they are one way or another way, and that they're not complex human beings that can think in multiple ways at different times is pretty ridiculous. So reading comments like that when watching a video like this where I think he's been pretty fair and balanced the entire time is super frustrating to see.
Sizes that we generally wouldn't have seen before last year. While this isn't solving our elevator, train, space station, and ship-related bugs of all sorts, there seems to be an emphasis on getting things more to a game-ready state over the last year for whatever that's worth. And I only see this trend increasing, as every update in that same time has added more and more unmentioned changes with big impacts to players. Things like crafting in the Vulture and Reclaimer, control hints for new players, server size increases, and even simple things like unrestricted ship spawning access will continue to improve the game in a space between those big features and the smaller bug fixes. And with PES in-game allowing more devs to focus on the real work they've been waiting for, it looks more and more likely that these unmentioned additions will continue to increase. But this still doesn't save them from the bigger bugs. Duplicating elevators, unsewed players, login problems, running into invisible objects and dying. These problems get fixed occasionally, but they continue to plague the player base and have a much greater impact than the simple inventory problems. They are session-ending issues, and sometimes stop players from even playing the game. In addition to this, we sometimes see some rather debilitating changes to the game itself that would make more sense if the game was more complete. Recent ship claim timers come to mind. So while the company does seem to be taking time to eliminate issues and improve quality of life, those fixes may only last a patch, and major bugs do still persist, causing plenty of issues. And that's where...
I mean, this is like a long-winded way of saying they need to keep adding features, and when they add features, instability happens. And when they add big features, big instability happens, right? Like PES. It is what it is. It's part of game development, and that's what it is. I think the frustrations from the community comes from the way they communicate those patches, right? They communicate them in a way where, oh, hey, 3 months in the PTU, guys, PES, let's go, right? And then when you actually go back and look how they communicated PES, I've said this a few times now, it's been very clear that that the intention was not to deliver the perfect PES experience in 3.18. The 3.19 branch is still the label of 3.19 is still the 3.18 branch. We'll see if we get improvements in 3.20. Maybe we do, maybe we don't. But I don't think the way they've communicated it to us, the players, in terms of a playable now, things are going to stay there for a long time. The power of PES is this, that, and the other thing. Well, I don't see the power of PES. I'm not experiencing the power of PES by any means at this stage. Very little bit, right? So it's kind of tough the way, and I think that's where the frustration comes from. Not necessarily that it's buggy. It's that they communicate how important things are.
Where the other current fixes come in. The big systems, the tools, the replacements. An example I used earlier was the new star map. Rather than fixing the controls, graphics, and interactivity of the old star map, why not just wait for a new one to revamp the experience since it's going to be done anyways? Why optimize shadows and lighting 2 years ago if the Gen 12 renderer would have those changes and more packed in when added in 3.18? Arena Commander could have seen many fixes over the years, but instead has received one major update in 3.20 which solved a lot of them all at once. The team could be polishing up bunker missions that we have problems with, but new AI logic, modular mission systems, and underground facilities will all replace them within a year. There are plenty of iterations of systems and tools that cannot be made until the supporting features were in place. And a lot of times they eliminate old annoying bugs and quirks, even while introducing new ones. We may have gotten rid of the terrible use button back in the day, but the new 2018 interaction system came with plenty of its own problems,
Yeah,
many
it's
of
just
which
a
I'm
shit.
sure they hope to solve with the upcoming implementation geared towards Squadron 42's release.
Their physics are kind of wonky. They fly out into space. You know, like there are issues around the vehicles. And there are so many posts here that I can see. I'm looking at them right now. 3 years ago, 2 years ago, right? A year ago, 3 years ago. Like there's so many. But like the vehicle thing, this will be addressed at some point. So why are we going to spend time fixing something with the vehicles now? Potentially risk introducing new bugs in the process, only to undo it all when we intend to rework the vehicles in the future anyway.
The obvious problems that arise here
Right?
are how many iterations
The obvious difference there is reputation. Reputation and all the other things that CIG has done in the past. Do you see how, like, that this is such an interesting video from that standpoint. Jace is saying things to a T what Star Citizen's fans say. Or what Star Citizen communication is. To a T. Saying it exactly the way it is. The same thing. Right? The difference is all the other things in the Star Citizen space of it's going to be this, it's going to be the greatest thing ever. It's going to be this, that, and the other thing. This is going to unlock the power to do this. Blah, 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 blah. All the BS. And I think this is a perfect video to explain why and everything that CIG does wrong. Right? And I don't think they can recover from their history anymore. Is all of that takes away. Nobody believes you, and nobody cares what you have to say when you're actually telling the truth. Right? It's like a cry wolf situation. Nobody wants to hear that we'll get to it at some point. Because we've heard that before. And we'll get to it at some point is like, you know, name 2 features that you've seen on a sneak peek, CitizenCon, ISC, sprint report, monthly report, roadmap update that you don't have yet. The chat's going to start moving, right? Because there's so many of these situations. Pyro's the best example. Bro, if it is CitizenCon about Pyro, is that not the 4th year in a row that CitizenCon has been about the next star system Pyro? Right? So it's the implying that it's going to happen and then it not happening is the thing. And then you have somebody who's trying to tell you how it is, like Jace did there for Coffee Stain, and nobody wants to hear it. Because you know what? Then you get Chris Roberts popping up at CitizenCon, and all these things that make it feel like it's going to be soon, right? Like these are priorities. I'm going to get to play that while I'm still excited for it. And by the time it makes it into the game, you are you forgot that it was even a feature. You know what I mean? So I love this video because he's showing the similarities between a game that has very little scope in comparison to Star Citizen with Satisfactory, going through the same exact issues and saying, you do understand. We all understand game development now because we're hearing it everywhere. But the part that Star Citizen is different is the way they present what the game will be and what it is, right? What it is right now is being misrepresented. What it will be with the feature when you get it is being misrepresented. How long it will take is being misrepresented, right? Sneak peeking something that you have no plans of actually making is ridiculous. Guys, they sneak peeked Pyro for a year. All last year, they sneak peeked Pyro. You're not getting it this year. They're going to show it again at CitizenCon, probably. It's going to be another jump point to sit, you know, and saying they actually meshed the servers. Remember that? What a joke.
Does it take? How many times will the flight model need to be tuned for enjoyment? How long is the wait for these new features? Should there have been a bunch of small changes rather than one big one? Would we have been better off getting star map changes in 2020 rather than waiting another 3 years for the full thing to be replaced?
You would have been better off shutting off the servers and making the game. I think that's the only way we would have been better off if they stopped adding features that needed to be at a level of polish that was playable and just made the game in the background. I think that's the only situation where we're better off in terms of playability, but I don't think we're better off with a, you know, community, hype, advertising, you know, all those things. So I think Star Citizen suffers if they do that in general. So that's why they do things the way they do. I think it's
This is a large part of the conversation surrounding Star Citizen and actually was a major topic on that podcast with Yemix. Iteration and the amount that's needed is a constantly debated topic in Star Citizen. There's no right answer in my opinion. While I'm no game developer, I can understand that there are likely different ways of working based on the situation at hand. It may not be possible for us to know if the strategy that CIG took was the best for this game, but it has become abundantly clear that the balance between development and bug fixing in a live game in development is incredibly important to get right, and can make or break the success of a game.
Right, Zero? Fix the game.
This is a large conversation. I just wanted to make a short video to try and explain it to some extent. It's not just a Star Citizen issue, it's a live development issue. And we see that more and more as these games come out in various states. And it won't be going away.
He wrote at the bottom, Star Citizen is still an anomaly. It's not. It really isn't. It's just like everybody else. I think they're just trying to do ridiculous things. And then the way that they frame everything, right? The way that they're selling everything. Like they're selling you Star Citizen, but funding Squadron 42. And like a lot of the things he's sitting there talking about, they're in active development, right? They're working somewhere else and they're not showing them to you. So now they're actively going away from their original model of, hey, you know, you get to play the game as we build it. You're building some other game that none of us get to play. Jay streams, by the way. Is it okay to post his channel? Sure. Yeah, I know he moved away from Coffee Stain and has like gone out on his own.
So if you aren't interested in a game that isn't focusing on polishing and the player experience first, stay away from Star Citizen for now, because that is not their main priority. If you'd like to continue following along with and learning more about it though, I've got you covered. I release new videos every week, streams almost every day, and various podcast reaction videos and news on my second channel, Space Tomato 2. So if you're looking to dive into this, I'm happy to help. And if you'd like to win a 400i exploration ship in the game, along with a copy of Star Citizen, we just started our June giveaway. Every month offers a new chance to win something nice around here. All you have to do is enter in the link below. And you can also find the secret code I left somewhere in this video to turn in for additional entries. Whatever you decide to do, thank you for watching this video. I hope you learned something new, and I'll catch you in the next.
I mean, for me, the most like educational aspect was just hearing the exact same words coming out of another developer's mouth, right? Where a lot of people go, Star Citizen's different. It's not, right? It's not in so many ways. And like just thinking about, well, then why when I hear it from him, it's okay. And why when I hear it from Jared, it's not. It's because of what were all the other things Jared has said. You know, not that they're his opinions or whatever, right? But he is the mouth in a lot of ways, right? And it just got me thinking of like, well, why don't I respect the Star Citizen side And why do I respect Coffee Stain Studios? And I think it's because Coffee Stain is very clear about what they are and what their game is. And Star Citizen is not. Star Citizen is trying to appeal to everybody and is trying to do a lot. Here's the tomato video in chat. And I think they bit off more than they can chew, and they're doing their best to hold on during this wild ride in a way. And it's not always looking good, you know? And I just find that very interesting. And I think I need to think on that a lot more about why it's so different in my mind. But I have no faith and I have no trust in what's being communicated to me on video and in text from CIG at this time, because I've been duped too many times. Whereas with Coffee Stain, it's like, here's what's up in our next patch. Here's what we're working on. Here's what our priorities are. Here's our problems. And they lay them all out on the table, and that's it. I think Star Citizen doesn't lay the problems out on the table enough. For example, it's probably time for a PES update. The like a post-mortem or something like that. Here's where what we did do. Here's what we failed with. Here's what we're going to do to solve those failures, and here's where we're going to go in the future. I think it's time for another with PES. What's happening with that, right? Because it was not a good release. Borderline the worst release Star Citizen's ever had. And what are they going to do to fix it? You know? They said they would do a postmortem and we never got it. Yeah, exactly, right? But Coffee Stain would do their postmortem and tell you right in the video. Jace would just say all the problems, just list them right out. But Star Citizen has to be so meticulous about what they say. You know what? If you told the truth all the time and didn't massage everything, you wouldn't have to be so meticulous, because people wouldn't have to read into what you were saying if you just said what the problem was, right? iCache, remember that? We don't forget. And maybe we should.